Alright, so today we're going to go over a little bit more about router operation. We're going to talk through one of your first basic router operations that you're going to want to do here, and then show you how to make sure that you have your file properly made here. One of the first things we do is we go into options, machine options, make sure we have rotary cutting selected. That gives us these extra tools here as options. And we're going to go ahead and run through the setup on the machine. Let's go with machine option here. Okay, so a couple of important things here. One, we want to make sure our post processor is set to non-float. Our z-axis 0 is going to be the top of our work. That is to say that it's going to be the top of our material, whatever it's going to be. Okay, everything else will stay exactly the same as you would with the plasma cutter. The next one is options, job options. We're going to talk about a job option. A couple of things here. We are going to need to state the thickness of the material. That's going to be one of our important pieces here. I'm going to be working with some 1-inch material here. And we're going to go ahead and set our rapid clearance. I have it set it to 1/4 of an inch. That is to say it's going to lift off 1/4 of an inch off the material between cuts. Next up, we have the height above of the material. Height of bottom of material above table. We're just going to keep that at 0. There's no reason for it to be anything else. And then lastly, plunge safety clearance. Okay, and again, we're not going to be messing with this. We're going to keep it at that declared value. We could actually probably lower it down to 0.001 if we want to, but again, we'll leave that there for the time being until we start messing with other options here, but keep it right there. Next thing, we're going to take a look through. We don't have to worry about any of these other pieces here. We're going to leave that as is, but again, thickness of material and the size of material, being that I'm working with a 2x2 piece of material here, 1 inch thick with a rapid clearance of 0.25. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and hit OK. So now I have my material set up here. You know, that's gonna be what looks to be a 1 inch thick piece of material. That's what it's sort of showing us here. We're gonna go ahead and go back to the main screen. And again, I did that by clicking the middle, my scroll button, and pulling upwards. That allows me to see sort of my imaginary sheet of material here. We'll double click to put us back in the main screen. Before we do anything else as well, we're going to be working with a router here, so we're going to want to define the router tool that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and select my new rotary tool. We're going to call it my, this is my 1/4 inch tool here, 1/4 inch, single flute, and that's what we'll call that for now. It has a diameter of 1/4 of an inch. My flute length is going to be, my actual flute length is 1 inch here. My tool offset, we're not actually going to worry about my tool offset in this particular case, tool length offset, because we're only going to be using this one tool for all of our operations. If we're planning on doing multiple tools in the future, absolutely this will be critical. Since this is a single tool operation, we're not going to worry about that. Depth per pass, I've set mine to 1/16 of an inch. Ideally, you could probably take it down a little further, but as this will be our first test cut, we do want to make sure that everything is working correctly, and 1/16 inch passes allows us to see what the machine is doing. So I like running it at 1/16 of an inch. Feed rate is going to be 100 inches a minute. We'll just leave that there. Plunge rate is going to be 20 inches a minute, so that's how fast it's going to go down into the material. I like that 20, I keep it there. Ramp angle we won't worry about, and unless you have a very specific machine that allows us to adjust the spindle speed, you won't have to worry about spindle speed in this particular case. You'll only have to worry about it if you're working with a machine that allows you to have variable speed control, which a lot of systems don't. Our table doesn't come with one right now. It is something we're looking into in the future, but not right now. So this is my 1/4 inch single flute end mill here, or my router bit. Next up, we're going to need to import a part here. Let me find a part and we will take a look at that. So I've brought in two separate files. I'm right now going to go to my pointer tool. I'm going to click on the name of my part here. So this is mid bracket 1, and this is a WCNC plaque here. Okay. Well, let's start looking at this here. So one of the first things that we're going to want to do, we're going to start off with the WCNC plaque. Here's what I'm ideally thinking. This is a 1-inch piece of material that I'm working with. Here's what I want. I want to be able to cut the outside of this shape, which would be awesome. Let's do that. And then we're going to cut the inside of this, but if this is a 1-inch, we're going to take this down a 1/2 inch on the inside of these letters. These holes here are a little bit too small for the mill that the router bit that I have here. So we're not going to worry about those. Here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to go to my contours tool, put my mouse over this contour here. Let's right click, select move to layer, and I'm just going to say new layer. We're going to call this outside line, and then we're going to hit OK. Then with this contour tool, I'm going to click on this. Actually, I'm going to hold shift, hold control, and click on these parts. There we go. Click on these parts individually. You'll notice that they're turning white as I click on them. Come on now. There we go. And we're going to go move to layer, new layer, inside letters. Okay, so that's what I've done. I've moved these guys to one layer and this outside line to another layer. The reason I did that is I want to be able to make these cuts the way that I want to, and in order to do that, I have to separate them out individually. And you'll see how that works when we go to operations. So one of the first things that we're going to do, we have two options here that we're really going to touch on. First one is a new pocket operation, and we're going to do that to these letters. So we're going to select new pocket operation. We're going to do spiral pocket. We can do zigzag. You'll see spiral here as we take a look. I'm going to select inside letter. All right, so going back into it, we are choosing inside letter. We are choosing start depth of 0, cut depth of, well, let's say my material thickness is 1 inch, and I said I wanted it to cut to 1/2 inch deep. Depth through pass is going to be that 1/16 of an inch. My step over is 50%. We're going to go over that more in detail in a second. We're just going to go ahead and hit OK. Awesome. All right, so looking at this, we're going to notice that because we have a 1/4 inch diameter tool here, it's not going to get into all the corners here, which, is to be expected. Let's take a look at these paths individually here, or actually let's go and let's actually try something else here. What I'm going to have happen here is I'm going to reduce my step over. This is where the cut path cuts over into the path previous to it. Let's just say I had a 10% cut over. Oh, geez, no. Step over 80%. Okay, perfect. You notice that the higher I went, there we go, the less step over there was, meaning that there's going to be parts of this that the machine just won't cut, simply because there's not enough step over. There's not enough passes allowing it to come over and then cut out these individual pieces. We're going to bring this back down to about a 50% step over, because that's where I like it. We could take it further if we want, but for the time being, I'll keep it there as it is. Okay. I like that. Alright, so that is a contour. I mean, sorry, that's a pocket there. Wow, I used to speak English. Here we go. And actually, we can look at it here. It looks pretty good. And if we're to click our scroll button and pull upwards, we can actually see that it's cutting 1/2 inch into our material, which is pretty awesome. And we can see each individual layer as it cuts through. Double click to bring it back to main screen. Awesome. So that's a pocket operation. And you notice that it's a spiral, because what it's doing here is it's actually spiraling around one in order to get the entire cut made. Awesome. Alright, next up we're going to do our contour operation. So contour operation, we're going to go ahead and go with outside line, outside offset, so it puts that on the outside of this line here. My single flute tool, and then I'm actually going to go 0.97. Gives me about a 32nd inch of material down at the bottom so that I can actually just cut it out with a knife, because I don't want my piece rattling, and having a little bit of that extra material down at the bottom always helps. Depth per pass, we're going to keep everything else the same, hit OK. And you notice here that it has an outside cut. It's actually following the outside of the shape. Take a look, it's just one long series of lines. To get a better look though, let's go ahead and look around the side, and we'll notice as we go under that the cuts go all the way through the material. There we go. And we're going to go ahead, and it looks like I have no errors, no problems with this part here, so we're good to go. And then I can go into File and select Run Post Processor. It'll run it and we'll be good to go. And that's how this file is supposed to work. But again, I had to separate out these individual layers. Let me go ahead and show you that one more time here. We're going to go to the mid bracket here, and let's discuss this one. I'm only going to cut out these two as little drill points here. We're going to go ahead and, well, let's go ahead and edit contours. This one, we're going to go with the contour tool here, go to Move to Layer, New Layer, Outside Line. Okay. And then we're going to take this one, Move to Layer. Ooh, I'm going to hold Control, select 1 and 2. Right click, Move to Layer, New Layer, Holes. Okay. Pocket operation, we're going to do a pocket operation on holes. We'll keep everything the same, and that looks good. That was it. I just took the same tool, and you know what I didn't do though? I got to cut all the way through this. I need to change this back to that point. You know, we're actually going to go to that 9/8 here. We're going to hit OK. Perfect. So now that's going to cut all the way through. Let's take a look here. Go to our pointer tool, click the center, and look at that. Cuts all the way through. I like it. Okay. Next up, we're going to go over to our contour method. Outside line, outside offset, quarter inch, single flute, and again, we're going to go to that 0.98. Oops, 8. We're going to hit OK, and now we have an outside line. Let's go ahead and take a look at this from the side to confirm. Looks like the whole thing is going to cut out just fine. Double click to put it back to the main screen. So we have 1 and 2. Now the critical thing here I'll also mention is if I were to switch these by clicking and holding, like putting outside offset first, it will cut out the outside first and then do the inside spiral. You don't want that. So you want to make sure that your outside line is always the last thing you build out so that it cuts properly. And so you don't have a floppy piece of material just sticking out everywhere. So keep those in mind and we can go from there.